Hi, I'm John Vorperian, and this is Beyond the Game. The three topics I like to cover tonight are right in the sports business news: Detroit, the king of baseball, and PEDs. So, who better than to talk about the business and politics of sports? We have in studio again our good friend Evan Weiner, and Evan's book is now available as an ebook.
It's
Isn't
an
that
ebook,
correct?
yeah. That's the 2005 edition.
Hey, it's a collector's item.
Well, it's a collector's item, but Harvard University has it sitting on the shelves of Weiner Library in Harvard, and Columbia used that. So neither school ever wanted me, but they have my book, which is kind of odd. But you talked about Detroit. And,
I just want to bring up Detroit
Yeah.
because Detroit, where mother is half a word, unbelievably declares bankruptcy, and you've got a breaking story with regards to.
Well, it's not a breaking story. It's a story everybody knows. Mike Itlich, who's the owner of the Tigers and the National Hockey League Red Wings, the Major League Baseball Tigers, plus the Fox Theater and the casino and a whole bunch of other things, and Little Caesars, has decided the Red Wings need a new arena. And they will have, when the Islanders go to Brooklyn next year, they will have the second oldest arena in the NHL and probably in professional indoor sports in terms of the NBA, NHL, in the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit, which I think opened in '79 and was state-of-the-art in 1979, which isn't state-of-the-art today. The oldest arena is Madison Square Garden, but that has undergone massive renovations. Not that it's helped. It's still a hovering building with terrible sightlines, which opened in 1968. And here's something that you might want to know. By 1972, the Garden was looking at New Jersey and maybe moving because the building was so horrendous. But it's another story for another day. Itlich wants a new building. Detroit's bankrupt. State of Michigan says no problem, we'll kick in seed money and you'll build the building, and of course there will be the rest of that comes with it. Oh, it's going to create jobs, which it will for a short time, construction of 2 years. But in the end, when you look at arenas and you look at the jobs that are created, once the construction jobs are gone, you may have 60 people working for a team and they're not making a lot of money. People who make the money are the players, general manager, coach, equipment guy, and equipment guy doesn't make that much money, trainer and the assistant trainer. Those are the people who will make money, and the parking lot attendants. And the guy who tore the lid off of that was a guy by the name of Jay Cross, who was the point man for Woody Johnson when he wanted to build that West Side Stadium in Manhattan, which got knocked down by Sheldon Silver in 2005. And Jay opened his mouth. And he said, hey, look, the only people who make money off of this are the owners, players, and parking lot attendants. It's not an economic revenue generator for a city. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's debilitating. Hamilton County in Ohio has two stadiums, one for the Reds, one for the Bengals. 2011, they sold off a municipal hospital at 50 cents on the dollar so they could get money to pay down the debt on the stadiums. Last year, they raised property taxes. I don't know what they're going to do this year, but Major League Baseball wants $5 million from Hamilton County to upgrade the baseball park for the 2015 All-Star Game, and the Bengals want $21 million because they want upgrades as well. Taxpayers pay.
Now, with regards to Detroit, not only are they getting seed money from the state, but there's also a further double dip as to broadening out into the surrounding areas that abut Detroit, isn't there? And then aren't those counties or cities losing their local autonomy and saying, well, wait a minute, we don't want to participate?
Well, they have taken over with emergency managers, but it's not around Detroit. It's Flint, Michigan, it's Benton Harbor. It's Detroit is Detroit. They're not taking over Bloomfield Hills or any of the very rich areas. Yeah, Detroit's kind of weird because it's a double market in the sense that, it's a big market. It's a United States market, and across through the tunnel is Windsor and Ontario, which doesn't count in the market. However, for the Detroit Red Wings, it's a huge secondary market because the people in Southwest, well, it's not really Southwest Ontario, it's just Southern Ontario. They're not going to make the trip to Toronto, and they couldn't get tickets if they wanted to go to Toronto. So they go to Detroit, and Detroit does extremely well. It's Hockeytown, USA. Even though it's Hockeytown, USA, 1 mile south of the South. South is Windsor. Detroit is actually north of Canada. And you're not going to get any help for a new arena from the Canadians except the ones that come through the tunnel and pay the tolls and pay the parking at the place. But they're going to go ahead, and again, they're going to go ahead because they're going to say it's an economic indicator now, or an economic generator. Now, if you look at the city of Detroit, there's a new baseball park. Tiger Stadium is still there in some form. They don't know what to do with Tiger Stadium. There's a new football field. They've had the Super Bowl there. Super Bowl, of course, was a scheduled event. They've had the World Series, which you never can tell. You know, you might get there, you might not get there. Those are unscheduled. They've had a PGA championship there. Super Bowl, the Lions, of course, have moved downtown from Pontiac. Pontiac's one of those cities that's in really, really bad shape, and they don't know what to do with the dome. They've sold it, and now they're talking about putting a Major League Soccer team in there. But having the Super Bowl, having the World Series, having the Final Four, and I remember going up to SUNY Cortland and giving a speech or a talk. I don't give speeches, they're informal talks.
Right.
I mean, my speeches are, you're there, I'm here, I'm going to talk to you. If you want to ask questions in the middle, go ahead. I have no problems with it because it becomes, I can never be one of these guys sitting there with a script reading. I mean, I like the interaction of an audience. And so I went up to Cortland when they had the NCAA. On the fly, I did a talk. On the fly because I was listening to the radio on the way up, and it was Final Four night, and GM had emerged, and they were the title sponsor of the Final Four. And I did something, whether all these sports events, the Final Four, Stanley Cup playoffs, the golf championship, the World Series, Super Bowl, have they saved Detroit? The answer is no. Will an arena for hockey and concerts save Detroit? No. They'll create low-paying jobs for some people, but basically it's not, because you got the arena there. So why do you need a new arena? Because you want more revenue generators. You want wider concourses for concessions. You want luxury boxes closer down. You want club seats, all high-ticket items. Does any of that money trickle down to the vendors? Maybe in some tips here and there, but yeah, you're talking about per diem jobs. That's all it is. And you're talking in hockey, 41 games a year, regular schedule games, 2 preseason games. It's 43 dates. If you're lucky or unlucky, depending on the way you look at it, going the full distance, playing Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals, that's 59 dates. So what do you do the other 306 days a year?
I guess we have to look into concerts.
You get concerts, but Paul McCartney's 71. The Rolling Stones' aggregate age is in the 70s. Bruce Springsteen's in the 60s. The Eagles, their aggregate age is probably around 65 now. Those are the big acts. Who are the big acts coming out of the 80s and 90s that are going to be perennials? There are none. I mean, Madonna goes out here and there, but it's Madonna. I mean, there are no perennials right now. Of course, we said the same thing 10 years ago when McCartney was 61 and the Rolling Stones were 60 and Bruce Springsteen were in their 50s. I don't know how much longer they intend to go. I don't know. But Tony Bennett's 87, and he's still going strong.
I don't know, maybe we'll be looking at holograms of Sinatra and the Rat Pack.
Maybe. But so you got that. You got some religious revivals. You got some monster truck shows. Maybe you could pull the Pistons in, but the Pistons have a pretty good deal in their own building in Auburn Hills, which is a rich suburb, of course. So I'm not sure they want to be pulled back into Detroit if they have their thing going on up there. If you have 2 teams, NHL and NBA, well, you'll fill in at least 82 dates. The new building in Newark, their date fills are way down, partially because the Nets moved to Brooklyn, and the number 1 arena in terms of generating revenue this year was Brooklyn, and they're getting the Islanders in there. So you got to get traffic in there, and having 2 pro teams plus maybe indoor soccer, whatever else, wrestling matches, and concerts. But arenas at least make more sense. You could get up to, if you're lucky, 200 dates a year in an arena.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should bring that up, Evan, about 200. We were shocked to learn this week that the appropriate punishment via C League is 2-11 for Mr. Alex Rodriguez and Biogenesis. What's your take on all that? What is the C League legacy going to be?
Let's take a bunch of things at a time.
I threw a ton of stuff at you.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you the first thing. Intentional fraudster, what do you think that means?
Intentional fraudster.
And while you think of that, I'm going to give the background on that.
It sounds like jumbo shrimp or military intelligence.
Well, sports has a problem how to identify people like Alex Rodriguez. So the shorthand is cheaters. But they're taking illegal drugs or banned substances. The Controlled Substance Act of 1990 basically rendered steroids illegal without prescription from a doctor. So by definition, if somebody fails a drug test and you're admitting they're failing a drug test and you don't tell what the drug is that they failed for, it could be nasal decongestion. By definition, though, they've done something illegal. Yeah. But you never hear of that. It's easier to call them cheaters. Now, Mr. Tigard, I think that's his name, of the United States Anti-Doping Association this week was applauding baseball and the Alex Rodriguez suspension along with all the others, Ryan Braun. And he said it's good, something to the effect that, oh, this is a good thing because they're catching the intentional fraudsters. Now, you're Bud Selig. You're running this business, and your ally is the World Anti-Doping Agency or the United States Anti-Doping Agency, which, by the way, gets some funding from the United States taxpayers, and I'll go into that later if you want. And I don't know why taxpayers should be paying for drug testing for a private industry, whether it's baseball, cycling, or whatever else. But if you have a brand and your partner comes out and talks about intentional fraudsters, what do you think?
I would have to sit him down and say, give it to me again.
Intentional fraudsters. Okay, so we also are trying to figure out, and we are getting leaks from Major League Baseball, like water through a sieve, and maybe from Rodriguez's camp, about how Major League Baseball used text messages and Facebook and modern technology. And the Associated Press, I guess it was on Monday, maybe Tuesday, got some transcripts from the court where baseball had filed a subpoena or asking for a subpoena in a civil suit so they could ask wireless companies for texts. And we don't know who gave the texts, what companies, a couple companies were named, but we don't know if they gave the texts or not. Somebody asked me, he said, why would the text companies or the phone companies give up information if they did give up information? And that's totally unclear. If you read hearsay, and you're in the courts all the time, so you know the difference between what is thought to be truth and hearsay. So all these articles that we're getting, and whether it's in the newspapers or ESPN or MSNBC or NBC Sports or CNN SI, it's all hearsay. I mean, nothing, it's just somebody saying something, sources say this, sources say that. As far as I'm concerned, it's all hearsay because I hear the same thing. But anyway, they say some of these companies gave up records. They don't know who. And they started naming names like AT&T Mobility. Now, AT&T Ballpark. Where do the San Francisco Giants play? Okay, another company that was mentioned is FedEx. They're the title sponsors for the Washington Redskins. They do the FedEx Cup in golf and do other things. So I'm beginning to look at these carriers. UPS has all kinds of sponsorship in sports. So, I'm beginning to piece this all together. And of course, it's all hearsay because I could be full of it. And I'm beginning to connect the dots. And I'm seeing, oh yeah, let's keep the game clean. Now, the other thing,
less than an arm's length transaction going on here.
The other thing is this guy from the USAD. No, it's John Fahey. John Fahey, who is the president of the World Anti-Doping Agency, is going around the world asking countries to give money to the World Anti-Doping Agency, which has a $28 million budget. And the $28 million goes for drug testing, and some of it comes from the Olympics, some of it comes from the rest of it comes from all kind of governments kicking in. It's not that much money, but it's enough to question why am I, as a taxpayer, kicking money into there? Why is somebody from England kicking money into there, or France? And Fahey went before the French Senate and said something to the effect that, well, we have to protect the athletes. We have to look after their health. And I'm thinking to myself, what a load. Athletes are disposable. They're here today, they're gone tomorrow. We've done shows on concussions in the National Football League. Once an athlete is spent, once you can't get anything else out of that athlete, they're on the scrap heap. The NFL has not taken care of its players for the most part after 1993. I'm friends with a lot of them who, and I've told you the story, that occasionally I will call them and talk to them, and they'll say, hold on a second, let me take out my notes so I can remember what I spoke to you last time, because they can't remember. They get brain damage. And there have been suicides, and there's destitution among the former players. So Fahey is handing this on a silver platter to these legislators in France, and I just cleaned up my language, and saying, oh, we have to look after the long-term health interests for the youth and everybody else. And I'm thinking to myself, man. The other thing, which I haven't written about, which I wrote about, which is not in this book, but it's in the book after. The government of the United States did a study of people who were taking steroids in high school. Most of them were not taking it for athletic purposes. They were taking it for looks purposes and appearance.
No. Is this the trend with regards to, you mentioned Fahey, really the Olympic movement, their view of doping or any sort of chemical usage is strict liability for the athlete? Yeah. I mean, we've had instances where I believe it was Olympic hockey players as well as evidence in NHL players. Hey, I took some cough syrup, and that's it. In the Olympic stage, it's strict liability. You're out. And are we moving towards that because the expendability of athletes, because there's such a plethora?